So listen up, guys.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to read a little bit here. A friend of a friend of ours, a frequent business traveler, let's call him Dave. Dave was in Atlantic City for an important meeting with clients. Afterward, he had some time to kill before the flight. So he went to the local bar for a drink. He just finished one drink when an attractive woman approached and asked him if she could buy another. He was surprised but flattered. Sure, he said. The woman walked to the bar and brought him back 2 more drinks, one for her and one for him. He thanked her and took a sip, and that was the last thing he remembered. Rather, that was the last thing he remembered until he woke up, disoriented, lying in a hotel bathtub, his body submerged in ice. He looked around frantically, trying to figure out where he was and how he got there. Then he spotted the note. Don't move. Call 911. A cell phone rested on the table beside the bathtub. He picked it up and called 911, his fingers numb and clumsy from the ice. The operator seemed oddly familiar with his situation. She said, "Sir, I want you to reach behind you, slowly and carefully. Is there a tube protruding from your lower back?" Anxious, he felt around. Sure enough, there was a tube. The operator said, "Sir, don't panic, but one of your kidneys has been harvested. There's a ring of thieves operating in the city, and they got to you. Paramedics are on their way. Don't move until they arrive." So you just heard one of the most successful urban legends of the past 15 years. Now there's many variations on this one. It's been going around for a long time. One of the variations is has to do with a morality play with a prostitute and a married man. But it's all the same. Urban legends, conspiracy theories, and bogus public health scares go around the internet, go around the world effortlessly. Mark Twain once said, "A lie can get halfway around the world before the truth can even get its boots on." So why do some ideas stick? This is a sticky idea, and others die. And that's what this book is about. It's by 2 gentlemen, Chip Heath and Dan Heath. They're actually brothers. And one is was a researcher at Harvard, and the other one is a professor at Harvard. Dan is now teaching at Duke University, but they both came up with this in different ways. There was a book that some of you guys might be familiar with by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point. And in The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell talks about what it is that makes something tip. In other words, socially, what happens to make it from a small group of people to a large group of people. So the internet, social media is an example, okay? So some ideas are really sticky, and what I hope to share with you over the next couple of weeks is what makes something sticky and how you can make something sticky. The average person in business, or even in your family, talking to your children, business, but maybe it's Gwen wanting to market a certain product, and she wants people to know what it is that is really sticky about that, and so she would market it in a certain way. If you remember a couple weeks ago, I bet everybody that was here that heard Steve's presentation can probably go ahead and tell you what he said and what it was about. Anybody remember the flip-flop? The culvert. So Steve told us a story, and he made it sticky. I remember it, and it's been a couple weeks later. I could go back out and tell that story. But I want to contrast that. Remember when we were in college, they said contrast and compare. So this is a story drawn from a paper distributed by a non-profit organization. Comprehensive community building naturally lends itself to return on investment that can be modeled, drawing on existing practice. It begins. Going on to argue that a factor constraining the flow of resources to CCI is that funders most often resort to targeting or categorical requirements in grant making to ensure credibility. Now, if I asked you after you got done with breakfast this morning to go and tell either one of those stories, would you be able to remember the last one that I just told you?
No.
Yet communication oftentimes is that way, whether we communicate with our employers, our employees, with each other, our business associates. Those are the kind of things. So we want to make our ideas like the first one. We want to make them stick. We want people to be able to remember what we're telling them and make an impact. The average person needs to, according to the statistics in this book, the average person needs to make something sticky once a month up to once a week. So I don't know where you fit in that continuum, but when you're making your ideas and you're trying to get things across, there's times that you need to make them sticky. Okay? So something sticky is something that's understandable, something that's memorable, and it's effective in changing thought or behavior. So when we're talking about sticky, that's what we're talking about.
Say those again.
Understandable, memorable, and it's effective in changing thought or behavior. Okay, so this book really is a book about communication. I actually came across this book about 5 years ago, and I never read it because I just got busy with other things and never got to it. In my business, I get to listen to books on tape, and so I listened to this on a tape, and I'm like, I need to buy this book because it has a lot of information. And in the weeks coming up, I'm going to share some of that with you, but I can't obviously share it all because there's just so much in there. So, Made to Stick is a book that will transform the way you communicate ideas. You've got ideas that you need to communicate, a new product coming to market, a strategy you want to sell to employees or business associates, and values that you're trying to instill in your children. It's hard, fiendishly so, to transform the way people think and act. So, Made to Stick shows you the vital principles of winning ideas and tells you how you can apply these ideas. So the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about what makes an idea sticky. And I'm going to give it to you, break it down here. There's 6 ideas, and it uses the acronym of SUCCESS. So the first idea is simplicity. How do you strip an idea to its core without turning it into a soundbite? Simplicity, that's the first one. Unexpectedness. How do you capture people's attention and keep it? Unexpectedness. Concreteness. How do you help people understand your idea and remember it much later? Credibility. How do you get people to believe in your idea? Emotional. If you remember Steve's story, there was an emotional component. Certainly it was emotional for him, but that's part of the reason why you remember it. Emotional. How do you get people to care about your idea? And last but not least, stories. Mayway has talked about stories. Steve gave us a story. That's why you remember it. Stories. How do you get people to act on your idea? So the idea of stickiness actually came from Malcolm Gladwell. He had 3 parts in his book he talked about. And the first part of his book was on how to get the right people to make something go from a small group to a large group. The second idea, the third argues that innovations are more likely to tip when they are sticky. And then the second idea was the stickiness factor. So I need a volunteer. Actually, 2 volunteers. Steve
Here.
and Thane. They're right next to each other. Okay? So I'm going to give Steve, what I want you to do is, let's see if I can find my card. This Thane, you're going to be the listener. You're going to be the listener, and Steve, you're going to be the tapper. I want you to tap this out, and Thane's going to go ahead and listen to it and try to figure it out. Now,
I'm going to tap on things, Dad.
you could, but it probably wouldn't sound as good.
Oh, thanks.
So I want you to tell, what do you think your chances are of him getting what you're tapping out? What percentage would you say?
Oh, fuck. Oh.
25%.
25%. Okay. So I want you to tap it out, and Thane, you're going to listen and try to determine what it is that he's tapping out. What song that it's a song,
It's a song.
and you're going to listen, and it's a well-known song.
Can we give him a clue?
No clues. You can't hum. You can't do anything. Just tap it out on the table.
All right. Ready? Hey, who tapped? Gary? Here goes. Right on. Good job, dude.
Wow.
Very good. Very good.
Never gotten that.
From tapping.
Did everybody else get it?
I didn't.
Nope.
No, I
Nope.
didn't.
Okay, so
I had no idea.
there was a research that was done on that particular one in college, and they asked people to have a tapper and the listener. And then they asked, like I did to Steve, they asked them to rate what their percentage was, or their chance. And they said 50%. Now, in most cases, the person listening to it, got it only 2%. And the reason why that happens is because Steve is playing the song in his head, but Thane doesn't know what that song is. So the rest of you that heard him tap it out, did you know that was Happy Birthday? No, because it was in his head. You oftentimes don't get it. And that's in our communication, our interactions with other people. You're trying to get your point across. You've got it in your head. You know what you're trying to present, what it is that you're trying to talk about, but the other person doesn't. And so that's what we call the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge is what is the biggest impediment to making something sticky. So that's it for today, and we'll talk more.
Nice, Gary.
That's okay, Steve. I know you
I
only
knew
have
you could get it,
25% confidence in me.
Subjective,
I
right?
had it. I knew Thane could get it ready.
I know, that was amazing. I could.
Once you said it was a song, I was like, well, it's probably not going to be Katy Perry Fireworks.
Well, they used two different songs. They used Happy Birthday and the Star Spangled Banner, but I didn't want to go with that one.
Wow. I wouldn't even